The LA Kings' new general manager speaks. What did he have to say? That and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, one of the co-hosts of Locked On NHL Game Night, a nightly podcast and YouTube show wrapping up the night in the NHL, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Well, the LA Kings hired Ken Holland as their new general manager on Wednesday. Thursday, he and team president Luc Robitaille met with the media. Let's get right into the most important question that we wanted to have answered, and it was answered very plainly. Would the Kings' new GM consider making a head coaching change? The answer is no. It was made very clear with Jim Hiller in attendance, by the way, that Hiller will be the head coach of the LA Kings next season. And Ken Holland said he was looking forward to working with Jim Hiller. Jim Hiller did a tremendous job, according to Ken Holland, with the 105 points during the regular season. And that is by far my biggest takeaway from the first chance to hear from the Kings' new general manager. And it kind of goes with the overall tone from the press conference, which is, other than having a new GM, a lot is going to stay the same while hoping that a few tweaks can make the difference. But I want to make something pretty clear about Jim Hiller. I like Jim Hiller. I think he did a tremendous job in the regular season. First time as a full-time NHL head coach, and you tie the record for most wins and points in franchise history. It's tremendous. But my problem is the mixed message that I think is coming from the LA Kings. And it's ultimately why Ken Holland was hired as GM. The Kings, and especially Luc Robitaille, the team president, continue to say that, and he even said it on Thursday a couple of times, it's not about beating one team. It's not about winning one round. It's about winning the Stanley Cup. And I appreciate that. That's what I want as well. I think that's what you want as well. We want to see a team at least competing for the Stanley Cup on a year in and year out basis. So we're all on the same page there. So you go out and you get one of the greatest GMs in NHL history, certainly one of the greatest GMs of his era, and he's won multiple Stanley Cups. Awesome. But the mixed message to me is, if our goal is to win the Stanley Cup, we need to have a Stanley Cup caliber head coach. We've got the GM. Now, the question is, do we have the team? That's a big question as well. But the powers that be seem to think that this team is close, as crazy as that might seem. So why is it okay to have a coach who's not a Stanley Cup caliber head coach? How does this coach get the Kings closer to what their goal is? Again, not a goal of winning a first round series, a goal of winning the Stanley Cup. Now, is it possible Jim Hiller could grow into that kind of head coach? Maybe, maybe not. I'd say after this past postseason's performance that we all are and should be very skeptical of that. We want to win a cup. That's our goal. Great. But there are more experienced Stanley Cup caliber head coaches available right now. But we're going to stick with the guy who made some very questionable decisions in the playoffs and had a hand in us blowing a 2-0 series lead and being eliminated in the first round of the playoffs for a 4th straight year. That I can't really understand. And look, if the Kings were to fire Jim Hiller and bring in a guy like Peter Laviolette, that was the name that I threw out there because he has guided not one, not two, but 3 different teams to the Stanley Cup final, winning one of the times he was there. That doesn't guarantee. If you bring in Peter Laviolette tomorrow, does that guarantee that the Kings are going to win a title? Does it guarantee they're going to win a first-round playoff series? No, it doesn't. But it's hard for me to believe that the same mistakes that were made this postseason would be made by a head coach like that. So isn't making that move a move that would increase the Kings' chances of having playoff success or getting closer to a Stanley Cup, which we're being told is the goal? It seems to me the answer to that is a pretty obvious yes. Now, Ken Holland has repeatedly said, or did repeatedly say, that the LA Kings, he thought, watching this team, evaluating this team this year from afar, that this was a team he thought was going to make a serious run at the Stanley Cup. I think he felt this was a team capable of making it to the Western Conference Finals. So, again, if your GM thinks you're that kind of a team, doesn't it make sense to get the best coach available? If you're that close, couldn't that experienced coach make that little bit of a difference? Make that key decision in the key moment that gets you over the hump? I mean, it seems likely to me. But look, hey, this is Hollywood, right? We love a good redemption story. I would love for Jim Hiller to guide this team to another great regular season and be the guy to lead this team to a Stanley Cup title, or at least a run at a Stanley Cup. I'm rooting for him because I'm a Kings fan. I want him to do well, and I have nothing against Jim Hiller. I just see what I see, and I just have to make my comments based on what he has done. It would be amazing if he were to able learn from his mistakes and go forward and be a better coach for it and be a great coach. Do I feel confident that's going to happen? No. Do I hope I'm wrong? Yes. I sincerely hope I'm wrong. I'm not rooting against Jim Hiller. I'm not one of those people that is saying today he needs to go. And then, when he fails, say, I told you so, I was right. I'm not really interested in that. I'm just interested in the team doing the best it can. I'm interested in the team being the best version it can be. And I feel like one of the ways that they can help make that happen is to have a more experienced head coach. Now, again, there are some out there who feel like Jim Hiller is going to learn from mistakes. Clearly, Luc Robitaille and Ken Holland are in that camp. I hope he does. But as we've talked about on this show, based on some of his comments in the moment, and certainly even after the fact, I don't know that he is really feels like he made a lot of mistakes. I think he feels like he made the decisions in the moment, and that's that. And I'm afraid in that moment, he makes similar decisions going forward. But time will tell. I think we all have the right to be very skeptical about Jim Hiller learning. I hope that this show of faith in him will motivate him to be better. Hopefully, conversations with Ken Holland will help him to learn from last season and move forward, and we see different results. I sincerely hope so. Now, is it a surprise that Jim Hiller is going to be back as head coach? No, not really. I had said that while I thought the hiring of Ken Holland did increase the chances of having a possible coaching change. Holland hired 3 different coaches in 5 years in Edmonton, which was his last job. I also said that I would not be surprised if Jim Hiller was back, and I'm not. And it's not unusual for a new GM to keep the same head coach when he takes over a new job. I had mentioned it in a past show. Little research over the previous 2 seasons, there were 8 GM changes in the NHL. 4 of the GMs kept the head coach that was in place when they got there going forward for at least 1 season, or they promoted a coach from within the organization. Only 3 of the 8 GMs brought in a completely new head coach that first year they took over. 5 of those 8 GMs were taking over a playoff team, which is the case with Ken Holland in LA. And of those 5 GMs, 3 of them kept the head coach that they inherited. So again, it's not uncommon that a new GM would necessarily want to keep the coach that he has inherited. So yes, 48 wins, was it? 105 points. I mean, those are decent arguments for why you don't make a coaching change. And Ken Holland said something about evaluating 82 games over 6 games. But if the Kings were serious about winning a Stanley Cup, I don't know how you don't go out and get a more experienced head coach that has had playoff success to make your chances of winning a Stanley Cup better for next season. So Ken Holland said about Jim Hiller, quote, "He'll be a better coach next year for the experiences he went through this year," end quote. I certainly hope so. We'll see if that ends up being the case or not. By the way, Happy 56th birthday to Jim Hiller, born May 15th, 1969. I would say he got a pretty big birthday gift in staying as the head coach of the LA Kings. Thanks to the Kingstorian for throwing that out there on social media. So there will not be a coaching change going into next season. What could change with Ken Holland as GM? That's next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's an in-game, game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and during the action with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Which players are showing up in the biggest moments? How could tracking their trends help you build your next big bet? What would it look like to combine live prop bets mid-game based on how the action unfolds? If you've got a read on who's heating up, why not back it up with the same game parlay? How could a $200 bonus bet help you in your excitement if your first $5 bet hits? New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Ken Holland is the new GM of the LA Kings, and the reality is it's not really all that fair for him to answer questions about what changes are going to be made when he literally has been on the job for a little over a day. He talked about it. He met with Jim Hiller. He met with Anze Kopitar. He met with Drew Doughty on Wednesday, and then Thursday he met with assistant GM Nelson Emerson, and then he met with the media. So he talked about how he's going to have all these meetings and he's going to have to talk with all these people over the next few weeks. So it would probably be, we get more out of it, right? If we did this meeting in a month from now, he's on the job. He's talked to everyone. He's got a better feel for what he's going to be able to do. But I get it. This is a big story in the moment. You want to get him out front of the cameras, take some questions and all that. That totally makes sense. But I think Ken Holland, as based on what he said, it was kind of unfair for him to be able to give us really clear answers on the things he's going to do and, the kind of his grasp on where the LA Kings are from a really inside standpoint. He's got it from the outside looking in, but it's going to take him some time to really get a clear picture of what he wants to do. Because, of this, we don't know if there's going to be major changes. I think the feel from the press conference for me is that the big change for the LA Kings is Ken Holland. That's the big change, making a GM change. Ken Holland talked about how this team was close. And, he said when he took the job, the Kings were in need of, some tweaks. He said if he didn't think that, this team was if he did think this team was in need of major changes, then he probably wouldn't have taken the job. The reason he took this job is because he feels like him coming in, making, putting his spin on things might just be the thing that gets the Kings to where they want to go. Clearly, he's not in this to do any kind of a rebuild. They're not blowing up this team, and I'm in favor of that. I think that would be absolutely stupid. It's a solid roster. It's still pretty young. This is not that situation, and Ken Holland wouldn't have taken the job had it been that situation. So kind of the theme of what he talked about was tweaks here and there, maybe a signing, maybe a trade. Also talked about the younger players taking a step forward, and that is what he hopes with his input will be the difference. Some of the things he said, quote, stick with it, find a way to win a series. Every time get a little more confident. There are no magic wands. You have to believe in the plan, tweak the roster, internal growth, not about a big trade or a mega trade. Lots of building blocks are in place. Add to it, build upon it. Lots of positives to build on. Gotta stick with it. End quote. Those were some of the kind of buzzwords that Ken Holland was saying in his press conference. He also said, quote, I don't want to screw it up. This is a good hockey team. End quote. Holland was asked if he has full support of ownership to go out and get the best players available. In other words, to spend as much money as necessary. He quickly said yes. He said that this was an organization that was committed, and that was part of the reason why he took the job. I think this was clearly a question that was kind of lobbed out there about Mitch Marner, the Toronto Maple Leaf star, who's going to be the big target in free agency for a number of teams this offseason. Maybe the LA Kings are one of them, maybe not. But at least according to Ken Holland, Luke Robitaille has said this in the past as well. Ownership is willing to spend the money necessary to bring in a player like that if the Kings feel like that's something they need to do. So for those of you hoping that maybe Mitch Marner is a possibility for the Kings, maybe he is. I would say, we talked about this team not making a lot of changes. Obviously, there's no coaching change. And Ken Holland said that everyone in place in the organization is going to stay there. Assistant GM Nelson Emerson, Director of Player Personnel Glenn Murray. All those types of people are not going anywhere. Now, he did say that he has talked with Luke Robitaille about maybe adding a couple of pieces in the front office, some people he's comfortable with to help supplement things. That is a possibility. So there could be some additions, but it does not look like there'll be any subtractions from the Kings front office. He was not asked about any kind of a short-term deal that would include some kind of a succession plan. That was mentioned on the 32 Thoughts podcast. I brought it up on a previous show. But Ken Holland was asked about his contract. He would only say it's a multi-year deal, meaning it's more than one, which is, no one's going to give him, I don't think, a 1-year deal. So it could be 2, maybe it's 3, but I think the reports that he was not going to sign like a 5-year deal were probably accurate. So we don't know exactly. He did say it's more than 1, but beyond that, we don't know. Now, as for how many different people Luke Robitaille talked to about the job, that really wasn't cleared up. No surprise there. Luke only said that he, quote, talked to numerous people, whatever that means. I think, to me, the only reason that, some people I've seen on social media are upset that they hired a new GM so quickly. And I think the only reason to do that was if you were going to make a coaching change, because there are coaching vacancies out there. You're in competition for the best head coaches possible. So you need to get a GM in place if you're going to do that. How that all works out as far as the timing of Ken Holland, I'm not sure. Is it fair to have him say one way or another before he even has the job if he's going to make a coaching change or not? And does that change your timeline as far as what, when you hire the new GM or how many different GMs you talk to? To me, the way this went was, and I don't know how many people Luke Robitaille talked to, but I think whenever in the process it was discovered that Ken Holland was seriously interested in the job, then they focused on him and they made that hire happen. So I don't know how many people he talked to. I'm guessing it wasn't a lot, but once he found out Ken Holland was interested, then that probably ended talks with anyone else. And for what it's worth, I will say Ken Holland, I thought, came off as a very energetic guy about taking this job. He seemed genuinely excited, said he missed being away from the game, even though it was only one season for a guy who's been in it for over 40 years. He had talked about how he missed his first NHL draft in 40 something years. And he felt like, he missed it. He wanted to be there. So he said like his batteries are recharged. And again, he seemed genuinely enthusiastic about being the GM of the LA Kings. And it is a good opportunity for him. It is a good job, I think. If he can come in and make a few tweaks, as he liked to say, and it gets the team over the top, obviously that adds to an already very impressive resume as one of the greatest GMs, certainly, of his generation. Again, we'll see how it is. We'll see how it fits. I don't think, Ken Holland is going to come back, as he mentioned, to a job that he doesn't feel that he's taking a team that's very close to try and get him to the next level. So we'll see. Encouraging Ken Holland on the job. Not going to make a coaching change, but the Kings feel like he's the guy that can make those tweaks, make those maybe a key addition here or there that can get him over the top. We shall see. What was the one issue that I did take away with something that Ken Holland had to say? We'll touch on that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious? Then crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts Each 1-ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better-for-you unsaturated fats to help you feeling fuller longer. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days, whether you're snacking at your desk or on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. And if you're loving cracking into those shells for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein, providing all 9 essential amino acids, whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids. Wonderful Pistachios is a snack that works as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. There was one thing that I took a little bit of an issue with as far as what Ken Holland had to say at his press conference. I guess maybe better said what he didn't say. Now, he was asked about the strengths of the LA Kings, and he said goaltending, defense, younger players that are going to get better. He said the team knows how to check. And he also said 4 lines deep. He was then asked a follow-up question about how the Kings didn't use their 4 lines in the playoffs, and Holland basically gave a non-answer answer. He said a lot of things, but he never specifically addressed how Jim Hiller didn't use all 4 lines or even all 6 defensemen in the playoffs. And that's not a surprise. He's not going to call out his head coach in his introductory press conference. But I think also, I don't know that he ducked the question. I just don't know that he necessarily has all the intel at this point. As I said, he knows the Kings from the outside looking in. Did he watch every Kings game? No. Did he watch every Kings playoff game? I'm not sure. But at some point, I'm sure he will. He's going to have a lot of conversations. People hopefully will be very upfront and honest about some of the things that went wrong. And he can then, answer those kind of more specific questions later. Like I said, tough to answer a lot of pointed, specific, detailed questions about the team at this point. Probably something better he could answer a month or 2 down the road. So he didn't answer the question basically, but I kind of get it. I don't know that he knows all the details about every little thing that happened with the LA Kings this postseason the way you and I do, because we were so totally invested in all of it. So he didn't really answer that question. That was the only thing that I thought he kind of ducked a question. Other than that, I was pretty much fine with what he had to say. A lot of it was kind of predictable. But he did, like I said, the one question we wanted answered, he definitely answered it. I wasn't sure that was going to be the case. I thought he might say, we'll see how it goes. We're evaluating everything. But nope, he did absolutely flat out say Jim Hiller was going to be back as coach. He was not asked specifically about any of the team's unrestricted free agents this offseason. Vladislav Gavrikov, Tanner Jeannot, Andrei Kuzmenko, Trevor Lewis. That didn't come up. There were several Kings players in attendance at the press conference, at least reportedly. I was not there. But I saw our friend Russell Morgan from Hockey Royalty said that Quentin Byfield, Darcy Kemper, Warren Fogle, Joel Edmondson, Mikey Anderson were all there. And Jim Hiller said specifically he did speak privately with Andrzej Kopitar and Drew Doughty. And by the way, I would like to say thank you to the LA Kings for making these press conferences available. Unfortunately, I am not able to get out there in person for these. So as a service to people like me and to all the Kings fans, I'm appreciative that they do broadcast these live on their YouTube channel. And if you can't watch it live, it is there for you to go watch and hear what Ken Holland had to say and make your own judgments by what you heard. If you want that, it's available on the Kings YouTube channel, and that is appreciated by people like me who can't make it out there. A couple other Kings news and notes to pass along before we wrap up the show. Checking Kings players at the World Championships. Kevin Fiala had an assist in Switzerland's 5-1 win over Germany earlier today. 3 games in the tournament for Fiala. He's got 2 assists. And Philip Deneau had an assist in Canada's 5-1 win over Austria. 4 games for Deneau. He has 2 assists as well. LA Kings top skating prospect Liam Greentree was honored by the Ontario Hockey League. He was awarded the Mickey Renaud Captain's Trophy, which exemplifies leadership on and off the ice with a passion and dedication to the game of hockey and his community. So congratulations to Liam Greentree for that. Also, Kings prospect Jared Woolley and his London Knights playing for the OHL Championship tonight against the Oshawa Generals. A win tonight for Woolley and the London Knights, and they will capture the OHL title. 14 playoff games for Jared Woolley, 6th-round pick of the Kings in 2024. He's got 2 goals, 1 game winner, and 7 assists for 9 points. All right, for you everydayers, those who listen to watch Locked On the Kings every day, coming up on our next show, it is our weekly Kings fan feedback show. I am very curious to hear what your thoughts are on Ken Holland as the Kings' new general manager and on Jim Hiller retaining his job. And are you confident Jim Hiller can learn from his mistakes and be the guy to get the Kings to where they want to go? What do you think Ken Holland's going to do this offseason? Will he make any kind of a big splash, or is this going to be just some tweaking as he talked about? Anything on your mind involving the LA Kings this week? The email address is lockedoneddie, EDDIE, @gmail.com. Very interested to hear what your takes are on the Kings' new GM and Jim Hiller sticking around as head coach for at least one more season. If you're watching on YouTube, we'd love for you to post your comments in the comments section. And we'd like you to stay connected with the show on social media. Follow us on X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.